Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Joe and Jay Outspoken. You can find all of our media channels at linktree/Joe and Jay Outspoken. Today's show is part 2 of the Fisher family mystery. How about that, Joe? We left off last week on the first part of this story, kicking off our new series, Dark Crimes. How excited are you about this, man?
Man, I'm pretty excited, man, because you know what? I'm that guy that sips coffee and likes to watch Discovery ID. You know what I mean? We watch.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Man, if those shows were around when I was younger, woo, boy,
you probably wouldn't have liked them.
You're probably right.
You know, I hated history. I hated history in high school.
I loved history.
Did you? And I love it now.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
I love history, and now I just love the history of like alcohol and cigars. That's all.
An aficionado of those.
The aficionado.
Those things. All right. Well, folks, this is part 2 of the Fisher family mystery, and this is our new series in Dark Crimes. So here we go. All right, everybody. Here we go once again on the Fisher family mystery. We're going to wrap this up today in this episode. So, Joe, we left off last week kind of giving a little bit of history on Daddy Fisher and gave a kind of synopsis on everything that kind of went down. So, Mr. Robert Fisher.
So what we talked about last week was we set it up kind of to give suggestive ideas as to what drove him to perhaps commit these heinous crimes against his family, right? As you know, he came from a very troubled background because his mom left her dad and they got divorced, and his dad kind of raised the kids and they moved down to Arizona. So he already had that issue with his mom that she had left them or abandoned them. And so he was dealing with that. And as he got older, those feelings of abandonment carried over into his own relationship. And he was that very stern man. He was very disciplined. He was in the Navy. Remember, we talked a little bit about that. He wanted to be a SEAL. Didn't probably pass that psychologically. I don't know. But there's not a lot of information about that. But the point is that when he had his family, mom kind of came back into the picture, and she saw a lot of his father's behaviors in him, right? He was very controlling. What he said goes. It was just something that it kind of passed down from generation to generation. And I think that whole thing is what caused him to kind of go into that next stage, right? Because he was so fearful to be left alone. He was so fearful that his children be taken away, that his wife wanted to divorce him. But that was the next step. I mean, the guy was abusive, and they don't really talk about it physically, but like mentally, emotionally, that guy was top-notch abusive, right? To his children, to his wife. And we talked, remember, he threw his daughter overboard because she didn't know how to swim at the lake.
Good luck. Go for it.
I mean, we did that, but we did it in a pool. It was more of a controlled environment, not where this lake where you can't see 5 feet in front of you. And then,
my pool wasn't 40 feet deep either. So
correct.
50
Correct.
Feet.
Yeah, and then he was like embarrassed that his son wasn't a hunter, didn't like to hunt. I mean, come on, man. Everybody's involved.
Imagine if he had a son now that wanted to transition. What would have happened with that?
That's a whole different story we're talking about.
Yeah.
So now we've moved forward to the night of this heinous crime, and so neighbors in that Scottsdale area where they lived, they heard them arguing. And remember, we talked about this last week that they didn't really hear him get loud; they always heard her. Right.
Right.
So the neighbors heard them arguing at about 10 p.m. on the 9th. That was about 10 hours before the house exploded.
Went up in flames.
went
Yeah.
up in flames. So the police theorize that murders took place between like 9:30 and 10:15, because we're going to talk about it a little bit after. He was seen somewhere else at about 10:43 or something like that.
Right.
So they had an argument. Clearly, I think in that argument, she finally probably told him, I want a divorce. I'm done. We're not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm taking the kids. You know what women do, right? When in a position like this, in a very hostile relationship, a very abusive relationship, you're pinned against the wall. You're done, right?
Right.
Whether you love him or not, now you have to think about your children, and you're moving on. And I think that's where Mary Fisher got. She got to the point where, like, dude, you know what? I've been through you through thick and thin. I went through your problems with your back, the way you treated our kids, the way you treated me. I'm done. You know, I want a divorce, and I think that's the speculation of law enforcement on that 9th of April, was that she finally blew up. Right? I'm done. I don't want to deal with it. So then what happened was that they theorized before that explosion that he had killed his family. So
Right.
it's interesting, because if you're looking at the fact that you're hearing arguments or the neighbors are hearing arguing at 10 p.m. So the police are saying between 9:30 and 10:15 the crimes occurred in the family, in the house. So it had to be quick. So I don't understand really that, like, in the way they were laid out in their bedrooms and in the areas that were discovered, they were in bed, they were in their rooms. So did the argument just suddenly stop? Everybody went to bed. Now I understand the kids were probably in bed when they were arguing. It was 10 o'clock at night, right? So they should probably
Right.
be in bed. The wife is another thing. So the next thing he does is, so Mary Fisher was shot in the back of the head. All right. So
Right.
I would assume that before that, because that's a loud noise, that's a bang. Before that happened, he must have eradicated the children, right? And what he did to them, he slit them in their throat from ear to ear. Both of his kids. He
Mm-hmm.
then went and eradicated his wife, right?
So what the coroner had said, because obviously the two kids, passed away right away from uh,
Blood loss.
asphyxiation, blood loss,
Yeah,
everything.
they probably drowned in
Um,
their own blood.
yeah. And if they were asleep, it probably was.
Yeah, it's
Regardless, it
horrible.
was horrific. And then the wife, from what the coroner report had said, is that she passed away the exact same way that he had cut her throat
Yeah.
also, but he also shot her, which
So what's
really,
that tells you? What does that tell you about this guy?
man,
That
yeah,
like
that
he
sends you into a whole different level, because if you already know that somebody's dead and then you go ahead and go back, we see this in the movies all the time, right? They shoot somebody and then that person just empties the whole magazine into that person. You already know they're gone, but they're so enraged and they have such a whatever it is, that moment of
that was the
insanity
FU moment. That was the FU moment.
yeah,
You
right,
know what I
yeah,
mean? He just
exactly,
popped, and that's just like the final insult to that. Like, yeah, she's gone. She's been eradicated. She's done. But you know what? Pop. There you go. That's what you get.
yeah,
How dare you even consider divorcing me?
right.
Me, Robert Fisher, right? And that's horrible.
There's like a little piece to that too. Do you remember what caliber that it was that he shot her in the head with?
I was it a 45?
It was a 45.
Yeah.
And what did they not find in
A
his two
45.
safes?
They
Yeah.
found the empty case, but they didn't find the gun. So at this
Correct.
point,
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
They
at this
didn't find
point,
the gun.
he's considered armed and dangerous, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
and
So as this plot thickens and the story goes on, you see a lot of
right, but this guy
ask a lot of questions.
oh yeah, but this guy was an avid hunter. He had
Right.
a collection. He had a safe of rifles and guns, and
Yeah.
in the house. But the only thing that they couldn't find was that 45.
That was the only one they couldn't find. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, after these crimes were done, um, he then removes. He takes the what does he do? He takes the gas line from the
The
back of
gas
the
line.
furnace,
Yep.
pulls it off, right,
Mm-hmm.
and then he puts a candle in the house in the hallway. And so you know what happens. Obviously, the house is going to fill with the gas, and well, natural gas, and it ultimately it's going to end up
And then
exploding.
boom.
Yeah, so
Yep.
that's what happened. The house exploded when the firefighters arrived. They're talking about 20-foot flames. You know, that's high. That's a lot, right? And then there was secondary explosions, which now they know was the ammunition and things like that that was left behind by him. Again, he was a hunter, so he had a bunch of ammo in his home, and that's what they were. There was even some firefighters got hurt trying to fight this fire because of that.
Right.
Um,
So you think about it, man, like you and I, obviously we're not going to be involved in this whole kind of thing. But if you had to leave your house or your domicile in a rapid, wouldn't your guns be kind of like one of the first things you would think about taking with you? You'd pack a couple clothes, maybe if for people that have to take certain medications,
well,
maybe,
they didn't find any of his clothes. He took his clothes.
yeah.
His clothes was gone. The guns were left behind, but he took his clothes. There was none of his clothing was found.
I know
He
it's just weird that he wouldn't have taken because of him being a hunter and everything. That's why I was asking you, like, what there's certain things that you
yeah,
would take with you, and you would think that would have been
at least
so.
one long rifle.
At
At
least one
least
long rifle.
you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean. You're gonna need that for hunting or something,
yeah.
especially with him because he was a survivalist. The guy lived out in the outdoors, right? He was out in young Arizona all the time. So
Right, and speaking about that, where he ends up, in Young, um, that's where he was used to being. So you could speculate that they find his wife's forerunner out there,
hmm
correct?
hmm
And then his dog's still there,
yeah.
which that's another weird one too, man.
But here,
You're
let's take it back though. So the police saying, "Hey, he only took this gun." And so, but really, how could you account of what's missing? How do you know what he had? Because everybody that knew what he
That's
had
true.
was under that roof and gone. Right? The heat of that natural gas explosion, the heat of that would have melted a lot of things,
Yeah,
melted weapons together. There would have been, I'm pretty sure there was a couple of long rifles that were probably melted together,
right.
or just a barrel because, wooden stocks back in the days were common back in 2000. So who's to know if he didn't leave with a long rifle? So just the fact that he left with all his clothing kind of leads you to believe it was kind of premeditated. Like, I'm
Right.
going to pack my stuff. I'm going to make sure that I got what I need. So at about, I think it was about 10:43, I think we said, they found a picture of him at a ATM. He was
That's
withdrawing
eh,
$280.
yep, that's correct. Yep. It was at 10:43 on April 9th, 2001. Yeah, and that's the last picture or last known where he was at. And how much did he take out?
280. 280.
280 bucks.
Yeah, $280. So I
It
don't know if
just
that's the max that was in there. That's all they took. I don't know if he had some reserved.
Well, I remember, going back that far, your
Mm-hmm.
ATM, even now, like
Oh, had limits.
had limits. And
That's
I'm
true.
wondering if it would only let him take out so much. And he was like, you know what, I'm just going to take this and be done with it, kind of thing. I don't know. That's really, really weird, because it was after hours, obviously. So,
Yeah.
almost 11 o'clock at night.
So it's hard to
Um,
speculate because these time frames are hard sometimes. So based on that picture and what the neighbors had witnessed or at least testified that they heard, they're speculating that by the time they saw those pictures of him at the ATM withdrawing that money, that his family had already perished. He already killed his family. But they also say that it's possible that after he withdrew that money, he went back and killed him. You know, which kind of makes sense to me because hey, you get into this fight, everybody's kind of adrenaline's going, right? She's probably a little hyped up.
right.
He left the house. He's preparing. He's gonna go get money. By the time he gets back, she's asleep. The kids are asleep, and he could probably act on his crime then, right? Because you do what you do with the kids, you're not going to hear any noise. Then you go to Mary, do the same thing, and then you shoot her in the back of the head because you have that much hate for her, that much
Right.
anger has been built up because she's going to leave your ass because you're an abusive, crazy man. And so this guy he leaves his truck there. He had a Ram, right? Of course he had a Ram. He had a Ram, and he left his truck
Right.
there and took her Forerunner, her Toyota Forerunner.
Yeah, which is weird too, because the pictures of the house burnt down, like the carport, you
Mhm.
can see the back end of the Ram, but the truck that it burned up too. So
But here's what I'm thinking: if he's thinking, if I explode, if I blow the house up, it burns down with that explosion. You got natural gas going. It's going to burn for a little bit, and then the firefighters even let it burn because of the secondary explosions, all the ammo that was going off. They didn't want to approach the house, so they
right,
allowed it to burn. I'm thinking his thought was, you know what? If her car's missing, the first person they're going to start thinking is the wife is gone. The
mm,
what's in there could be the husband and the kids,
yeah,
or all we know is that she's not here and it's the husband and dad, so that delays them from going to do a search, right, or to try to figure
right,
things out at this point. Like, oh, she's not here, maybe she left, maybe she was somewhere else. They're not that concerned. Now think about it: if a man's missing, because the probability of man committing these kind of heinous crimes are probably higher than a woman doing it. So if it was his truck off the get go, they were like, "Where's him? Where's he? Where's the husband?" Because the husband's always the first person that gets questioned, right? But now that the car is the wife and that's the one that's missing, there's not a lot of importance behind it. The
right,
important now we got that's my hypothesis on it. But he takes her car and he takes his dog and he takes a 45, right? And of course all his clothing. So at this point, this is where then there's a manhunt because now the fire's out. They've gotten the fire. They're going through the rubble and they're finding the bodies, right? And they find the kids. Then they ultimately find Mary Fisher.
yeah. There was a neighbor that had, because in all this researching, I found the neighbors that were next door, and the one of the young kids. He said he
Mm.
remembered when they had moved in, and he was
Yeah,
pretty young. And of course, by the time they interview him, it's much later. He's much older, and the fire, like somebody from the fire department was there, and they said there's people that died in the house because people knew who they
yeah,
were.
yeah.
They said that he kind of kept to himself, but he was a nice guy, and that that yeah, they would hear them arguing, and it was normally her. The kids were well behaved and everything. They were big in their. They went to their church and all that kind of stuff. But anyhow, they were asking one of the guys from the fire department, "Hey, did the family get out? Do we know what's up with the family?" And the guy said, he said, "I've been to these situations before. I can smell that there's people in the building, because it's a different smell, I guess. I don't know. I've I've not been up to, but it's
It's
just
a horrific smell.
yeah, it's just a creepy thing to think, you
And
know,
yeah,
and being neighbors, um, knowing that these people died next door to you, and then later on to find out, oh man, this all happened because of a whatever disgruntled husband and this and that. And the thing is, I mean, I you know you kind of put it out there like, well, could they have gotten an argument and he left and somebody else did something, but it's just there's too many things that the detectives came up with that it's
the
pretty
the
much.
the puzzle pieces just fit perfectly. You
Hmm.
know, if you look at it and you analyze it and you do a little psychoanalyzing on it, she probably threatened him with divorce, which is probably something she never really did. She probably hit the fact that I think he got a urinary tract infection from that sleeping with that prostitute. I think we talked about that
Yeah,
last week. He got
last
a
week, yeah.
UTI on that, right? So think about it. This guy's he's getting sick. He's abusive. All kinds of things. I think she just hit her peak, and she just said, I want a divorce." You know, and that triggered him. That triggered him to his childhood and how he felt when his mom left, right? And he probably said, you know what, this ain't gonna happen again. This is not happening again. And he did what he had to do, right? And he probably killed his kids because he didn't want them to go through what he did. You go, look at him now. And that's his excuse. I think that's
Right.
his justification. Now think about it. Brittany, the daughter, was 12 years old. 12 years old. How can you do that to your own kid? And Bobby, the boy, 10. Right? How can you do that? How could someone be so evil? And to think that this is way better than having to go through what I went through. Yet you're still breathing. You know what I mean? You didn't do
Yeah.
nothing to yourself for that. Nah, but let me do it
Right.
to them. You know? And I think that's the most cowardly thing personally, but
It
that's
is.
just
Yeah. I mean, it's it's terrible and sick to hear about the, where they take out their whole family and then take themselves out. That's, man, that's horrific to hear too. But yeah, you're right. This is like even more chicken shit, for somebody to be like that. I mean, if life is so terrible and everything for you, and I'm not condoning, anything whatsoever, but it just seems, I don't know, man. I don't know
and,
how a guy could do that to
and
his family.
Mary was
Yeah.
38 years old. She wasn't that old. She was young,
No, that's
you know.
horrible.
And so
And then why did he take the dog with him?
that's his dog.
And
That was his dog. Remember that?
yeah,
Remember now? I don't know.
but then,
Last week, don't you remember we talked about like he used that opportunity to shoot I think it was a pit bull that we said in a neighborhood
right?
that attacked his dog and he shot him.
Yeah.
You know, and that was his excuse. That's
But then he leaves the dog behind.
he does. So
And here's what's really weird about that. He leaves the dog behind and the dog stays next to the truck. The dog doesn't leave. So I don't know about you. I've had quite a few dogs in my lifetime. And if I would have said, set, stay, this and that, once I got so far, man, that dog would be huffing it, trying to catch
yeah,
up to me. They don't want to leave your side, They don't care about a car. They want to be next to you.
wow.
And so it's really, that's weird. And so, was this like, I don't think it would have been way ahead pre-planned. In fact, it feels like something that once it started in motion, it just everything started happening and his mind just went,
I don't
just
know.
went nuts.
Yeah.
But if you start looking back on it, and again, I'm not saying this was pre-planned, but he was in the Navy, he went into SEALs training. Now, whether he passed or not, he still got a lot of training, right? And he started, going out with his buddies and hunting. In fact, and I think we mentioned this last week also, 2 weeks before the incident, he's out hunting with his buddies in the
Mhm.
general area that he disappeared in allegedly, right?
Yeah.
So, this is a guy that's probably pretty well versed in living out in nature,
Mhm.
and living off the land, eating MREs or whatever's available, that kind of thing. Who knows? Again, in my humble opinion, I don't think it's that in depth. I think he kind of snapped. There's a crime of passion stuff started going haywire, and then he just is like, what do I do? And he went to the only place he felt that he could get away from everything as quick as possible, because that's a 2-hour drive from where he was at in Scottsdale,
Mhm.
roughly, up to Young. And there's a lot of speculation that he dropped the truck off there, but he had a ride to somewhere else.
Yeah. So just
Because
to catch everybody up, after this happened, after he was saying at the ATM, the house exploded at like 8 in the morning the following day.
correct, yeah,
He disappeared, so they can't
he's
find him.
gone.
He's gone. They can't find anything about him, where he went, where he's at, anything like that. And
He
then
gone.
uh, I think April 20th was when they discovered, or someone called in, that there was a Toyota 4Runner out in Young, Arizona, just sitting out there, right? And and they had, I think, the DPS, or Department of Public Safety, on April 14th has sent out a bulletin to agencies and to the cities, and hey, be on the lookout for this vehicle. Well, someone reported, I think, on April 20th. So they go out there, and what Jay was talking about was their dog Blue. That was the name of the dog, Blue. Hey, Blue. Um, he was found. He was found under, the dog had taken shelter underneath the truck,
Under the yeah.
and he was hungry, he was agitated. So we talked about this off camera. We were discussing like what he just said, like the dog would follow us. Did
Yeah.
what was did he tell him to stay? Did he take off? Did I don't know what happened. Was someone else there and he didn't let him in the car and he got taken, drove out? I don't know. But they also found human excrement next on the passenger side of the door. Right. So he took a what's that saying? Does a does a bear take shit in the woods?
Yeah.
But
you gotta go. You gotta go.
you
man,
gotta go.
I guess. I don't know.
So because
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
it is. So inside the car was clean. They found the Raiders hat, which happened to be the same one that he was wearing at the ATM, and a cup with his fingerprint. That's it. Other than that, it was clean. So to me, it's like, why would they clean a car like that? Was there a secondary passenger? That they had a car up there and he got picked up. He picked his passenger up on the way up there, and it's like, okay, now we're switching cars. Let's clean this up so you're not involved in this whatsoever. That's a speculation. I don't know. Could have that happened? I know they did a search of the area in Young. If those of you who listeners that are from Arizona and that area, there's a lot of caves up there. There's a lot of all kinds of areas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did a very localized search. They didn't go too far. I think it was a mile radius, something like that. They didn't go out too far. But there could have been other caves he was hiding in, right?
Well, so like the timing of everything. So he goes to the ATM, which is pretty close to his home, right where he went. And it was at 10:43, 10:42, 10:43, something like that. So call it 11 o'clock. Okay, it's 2 hours to Young. And so you're 11 o'clock heading up there. You're not getting there till 1 in the morning. So it's dark, right?
Yeah.
There's probably no cars driving around or anything. So if anybody was up, they would have seen that vehicle, because we talked about this last week. Young is a very isolated place up in the mountains. You have to go off a side road pretty far to get down to the town.
Yeah.
It's not a town that a lot of people visit, right? And there's nothing there really. It's just it's honestly it's people that want to be away from other people, primarily,
Survivalists.
So what was the date that they found the vehicle?
April 20th.
Yeah. See, that's crazy, because so he leaves up there on the 9th and they don't find the vehicle till the 20th.
Exactly. And so, but it was a distance away. So, but here's the other thing.
Well, you think about the dog still underneath the car.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's probably why he's sheltered. And we can imagine he has nowhere to go. He doesn't know what to do.
Right.
And you start thinking, I'm like, why did that guy poop right close to the car? It's probably left the scent of the owner, and that's probably why the dog didn't go anywhere, just waiting.
You know what? And see, and that's some of that. That's some of that. I'm not saying necessarily SEAL training. I'm sure they don't teach you to poop to keep the dogs near or something like that. But
it makes you think outside the box.
It does. Well, there was here. Let me read a quote from it was a police detective. So he said it's been the topic of the most topic of conversation is why was the dog still there? Said Scottsdale Police Department John Heinzelman. If he committed. He self-eradicated. If he walked off into the woods, the dog would have been there with him.
Yeah.
So clearly he must have gotten into a vehicle and left, and the dog was just abandoned behind. So that's that one piece that I really wish that would have been able to kind of make heads or tails of. So even the, detectives are like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't think he just walked off into the woods there. He always went up there, right? We established he always went up there with his buddies and stuff.
Well, they camped up there. They camped in that area where they found the truck. So a lot of his friends now, the police are saying that he was probably checking out the area. He's probably getting familiar with that region since he's going to be escaping
Could
that
be.
way,
Yep.
right? But here's another
And
thing: the that where they found that forerunner is less than a mile away from Fort Apache Indian Reservation, which the police never went to go search. Right? It's a res.
mm,
You know what I mean? But here's the
yeah.
other thing: they followed a set of footprints that led into the reservation, but then they just didn't follow it
Mm,
because it's the res, and so you have tribal police that has to deal with that, right? But I don't think they
right.
involved them at all. They didn't want to get on that area, so it's
Yeah.
kind of scary. But some of his friends said that they camped in that area. That they're speculating that he was surveying the area. He's getting kind of familiar with it.
Right.
In fact, there was a lady who, and it wasn't until they discovered a truck that reported a man fitting his description walking along the side of the road
Yeah.
with a big backpack, right? That resembled Robert Fisher.
Okay. So now, so that kind of makes sense to the story, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there was no, his clothes were all gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
The truck was, or the SUV was clean. The Forerunner was clean when they got there.
Mm-hmm.
As far as all the reports, I never read anything that said all of his clothes were in there. So where did all of his clothes go? Right. So he either put them in a bag, which I couldn't put all my clothes in one backpack, but maybe he dumped most of them somewhere and then, or this was kind of, again, that premeditated thing a little bit, not weeks and years in
Right.
advance, but he started thinking about this. And again, maybe they got in the fight. He goes and gets did he get the money first and then go back and do everything and set the gas to explode? Did he do that and leave and get I don't think so, because I think it would have exploded, like if he had done it before he went to the ATM. I don't think it would have, like, the gas wouldn't have leaked for, what would that have been, like 8 hours? There's no
Yeah.
way. No
Yeah.
way. So he was premeditating that action. Now, maybe when he went to the ATM, it was only to go get some cash out. Maybe he was going to go drinking or something like that. You think about it, and then it's just boiling up in him. He goes back. I'm just going to get my clothes and get out of here. They get into another altercation, and boom, that's when it happens, kind of thing. There's so many,
There is.
so many, but now, I mean, ultimately, at the end of this is, where is Robert Fisher?
Well,
I
here's the
mean,
thing. So a guy that knew Robert Fisher, uh, they said they spotted him in Vancouver. So they
yeah.
arrested this man that looks that resembled Robert Fisher, like down to the T. He had a even like he had a missing tooth or something. Or the guy that they arrested, his tooth was missing where Fisher had like a gold cap or something on there,
Oh
right?
yeah.
He had the same identical back scar from his surgery,
Hmm.
just like everything. What he walked just like everything. There was a guy that knew him. They actually showed him a picture and he said, "That's him. That's Robert Fisher." But guess what? His fingerprints didn't match, so they had to let him
Yeah,
go.
that's weird.
Everything was identical, and I'm talking everything. Everything was starting to match up. They're like, "Oh, we got our guy," and then the fingerprints came back. It's like not a match. So again, did Navy SEAL training teach you how to remove? I mean, I doubt that, but like, how did they not match? If
Well,
he had the
what
same
would have
back
taught?
scar, same tooth where he had that gold filling, is missing. Like there was so many. He talked like him. He sounded like him, and this is coming from the guy that knew him, right? Same back scar. Everything was identical. Height, everything. Only thing that wasn't off was the fingerprints. That's it. So,
Yeah, so weird. And he had been in the military,
mhm.
and I don't know what year that was, because this all happened in 2001. So,
And we have to keep in mind though, he's not been caught. So there's a lot of stuff that the of course the police still do not release because it's still considered an active case. It's
active
it
case, right?
it's a what do they call it? It's a
Cold file.
cold file, but it's still
Yeah.
active. It's not been closed, right? Because he's still
Right.
missing.
Yeah, he's still so he was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list.
Mm-hmm.
They deactivated that in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
basically 20 years after everything went down, right? So it was November 3rd of 2021 is when they deactivated it. However, even though you're deactivated, you still stay on the FBI's most wanted list. He's number 475. So
Mm.
if you do get online and look him up on the FBI
I
listing,
mean,
he's still on there.
there's been so many sightings of him. Actually, in Commerce City, Colorado, the police raided his house where they said that he was there. They got arrested 2 occupants, but there was no Robert Fisher, any signs of Robert Fisher. I think we talked about it last week that he has family in New Mexico and Florida. I think was.
Yeah.
Um, and so they've looked in those areas. Speculation is this guy's he's a handyman, right? He's average looking Joe. I mean, not like Joe me because I'm not average looking, but average looking Joe. So he could become anyone, right? He grows
Right.
a goatee, he resembles anybody.
Yeah.
A mustache, anybody. Of course, he's aged from 2001 to today. You know,
Oh, yeah.
um, it's been 13 years from now.
Yeah.
Or 23 years from now. So there's so many things that now you could do that, those age progressing photos, where they age you, but
Yeah.
it's never ever to the T. But so they think there's theories that he's down south, right? He's living down south, or no one knows who he is, doing handyman work. The guy's a survivalist. He's going to survive no matter what.
Yeah.
You go to
Well, I
some,
would.
you go to some of these southern American countries, bro. You don't even have to be a survivalist. There's bananas falling off trees, mangoes falling off trees. You know what I mean? You could live in the beach for all you know, and still be fine.
Well, there's been a couple different sightings of him up in Canada, and in my opinion, if he's
Chinooks.
still the Chinooks, if he's still alive, I would imagine that he hightailed it out of this country.
I would
I
think
would
so.
think,
But he's real arrogant and very cocky. So would he kind of be in their face, kind of like, "Yeah, I'm still here, fools. You can't catch me."
right?
You know?
Yeah. If I was gonna, so his background and how he is and everything, I think out of New Mexico and Florida, he probably would have went to New Mexico, right? New Mexico is one of the states that there's a lot of a lot of empty land, a
Mm,
lot of
yeah.
empty land, and you know, houses spread out, um, and again, a lot of Native American, reservations and stuff like that. That you can, if you smell the heat coming on, you just run into the res or whatever, and so maybe that's his thing. Maybe he's staying somewhere with people or something like that, and whenever they think somebody's coming his way, he just jumps into the reservation because he knows that it's. But I mean, there's a lot of those places too that the reservation police will work with the out because they have people coming outside of the res too, and they want to take care of those
Yeah.
people, so they do work together. So I don't know if I don't know it'd be hard for him to trust anybody. I
Yeah.
would think if he's in my opinion, I don't think he's alive anymore.
I
I
don't
really
know,
don't.
man. You might be right. What do I know? But I know one thing that. Well, here's another one. In 2009, there was a this heated altercation in Guatemala between tourists and this man that closely resembled Robert Fisher. So by the time FBI heard of this and they got down there, he was gone. And they
Right.
still that lead they're still looking into because that one was like very important to them. Because they're thinking, oh, what if it was him? A lot of factors in that, and they're not releasing it again because it's still an active case. But they
Yeah.
said there was a lot of things that led them to believe that might be a very good lead. So I don't know. Um,
Hmm. Yeah. I don't know. maybe he is. He got away with it, and he's hiding out. And maybe he's just becoming. Remember the movie Rambo?
Oh yeah.
Just being very transient.
They drew first blood, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, this guy drew first blood. But I don't know. I don't have much of an answer. There's more. Actually, after we researched this more and more, it confused me more and more. And why would you do these things? And maybe that's exactly why the dog was left behind. That's why he took a poop off the passenger side. All of this stuff, these little things throw people out. They're like, why would you do that if you're seriously trying to get away and all this kind of stuff? And then why are you going to, so if I'm going to hide out in that foresty area there,
Yeah.
am I going to leave the vehicle and my dog that's going to be whimpering eventually and people are going to start paying attention to it, and a car on the road? Why wouldn't I, run it off? I'm not going back to the car anymore, right? I need to hide it. Why wouldn't I run it off a ditch or something?
Right.
He knows those areas, dude. That's where, what do they call that? The rim that's up there. There's plenty of places you could, run a car off into.
Mongolone rim or something.
Mugion rim, yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. But
I used to think it said Mongolian, but it's Mugion rim.
Yeah, that's what I said too. But hey, so listeners and viewers, anyone out there, if you guys have any tips or anything that you need to know, that you need to contact the FBI, or if you've seen somebody that resembles Robert Fisher, look him up, Google him. I believe there's a docu-series called "Where Is Bobby Fisher" or Robert Fisher. Any tips, contact your local FBI office or call 1-800-CALL-FBI or FBI.gov for any leads to Robert Fisher. This guy needs to be caught. I don't care if he's 100 years old, man. He needs to be brought to justice because what he did to his family is unforgivable. Unforgivable.
Yeah.
And it's a heinous crime. And if he's gone, he's gone. I'd like to see his bones, some proof.
Well, and that was, I guess, the thing we'd kind of leave off with here is, he was in the military, and I don't remember when it said he was in and when he got out and all that, but they've been doing, of course they do blood tests and all that kind of stuff, and the military has your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So in case you're dismembered, if something happens to you, they can at least get your DNA and identify you, right?
Exactly.
And so his DNA would be able to be identified if they do find him. So, but I mean, if he truly tried to off-road it and get out there in the wilderness and everything between bears and cougars and stuff that are up there, I don't think he would have made it that long.
That's if he stayed up there.
That's if he stayed up there.
But just remember, he is considered armed and dangerous, so be careful.
Yep. Well, everybody, hope you enjoyed this second part of this episode here that we did.
I did. I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, the researching of it was really fun and digging into it, and yeah, definitely. If you have any comments or questions or things that you've heard in the media, or maybe you've seen something, definitely throw a comment down below. Maybe we'll do a recap to this sometime in the future if we have any kind of like Unsolved Mysteries used to have the update thing at the end of the show.
Do that.
We'll do something like that. But yeah, we really appreciate you guys. Listen, we'll do some more of these episodes down the road. It takes a lot of research and digging deep and everything else. So next week, every Tuesday, we have our Outspoken, and then every mid-month Wednesday, we have Outspoken Men's Edition. So we'll see on those dates, but we'll let you know when one of these episodes come up. We'll let you know. So, all right, everybody. Well, have a great week, and remember, take care of one another.
We'll see you